I lost my job. And it was the greatest thing to ever happen to me. Times are tough right now. Companies are closing, there are layoffs, robotics and AI are sort of taking over. The economy is shaky. Things are very uncertain and things are changing by the minute. And thousands of people are unfortunately finding themselves unemployed. There are people losing their jobs left and right. But for those that are prepared, those that planned ahead, it just might be a blessing in disguise. For those with a side hustle, they'll end up being just fine. For those with the right side hustle, they may be better than fine. I'm going to tell you why I think that, but first let me give you a little bit of my backstory. And yes, it does end with me losing my job. But rather than it being the end, it was actually just the beginning. From a really early age, I watched both of my parents work very hard. But not only did they work hard, they planned ahead. Looking back, I can see exactly why they did the things they did and exactly what they were thinking. At the time, maybe not so much, but now I can look back and see why. My dad worked full-time when I was a kid, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, which was a little more common back then. I'm not that old, but it was a little more common, right? Things have changed and it's a little more difficult nowadays for a single income family. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom and my dad worked full-time, and he mostly had like blue collar jobs. So for a while he delivered heating oil, he drove a dump truck, and then later on he became a service technician at our local Ford dealership. And he's amazing. He can fix anything. And I'm pretty proud to say that in a lot of ways, I followed right in his footsteps. I love fixing things. And he really instilled in me that mentality of, instead of throwing something away, try and fix it. And honestly, that goes for machines and a lot of things in life. So like I said, both of my parents worked very hard. My mom, of course, took care of me and took care of our home. And she also had sort of a side gig where she contracted herself out to do wicker and caning repair, like in furniture. She would do that in our basement at home and earn a little extra on the side. My dad would go to work at the Ford dealership at 7:30 every morning, Monday through Saturday for the most part. And he'd get home at 4:30 every evening. And as soon as he got home, we would eat dinner. After dinner, which I don't think I really realized at the time, but I realize it now, a lot of dads, we'll go with dads, a lot of dads will, sit down and watch TV, have a drink and relax before getting up the next morning and doing it all again, right? But not my dad. When we finished eating, he'd head out to our garage at home. See, in addition to working on cars all day, he had started a business of fixing lawnmowers and small engines, generators, chainsaws, all of that stuff in our garage in the evenings and weekends. As I got older, maybe 10, 11 years old, that business continued to grow and I took an interest in it. And he started teaching me and letting me help where I could. Pretty soon we worked side by side with more business than we could handle. We spent evenings, weekends, even some holidays, just trying to stay caught up. It was a good problem to have, right? The extra money for our family, it wasn't a bad thing. And between what my mom made doing the furniture repair, what my dad made at the Ford dealership full time, and then what we made in our garage in the evenings, it wasn't bad, right? For the time we were doing okay. I wouldn't say we were rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we had a house, they had good vehicles, we had food on the table. Things were pretty good. And I was thankful for that then and thankful for that now. That hard work that my parents put in, they did it for a reason. Now, as time went by, our business was still growing, and we decided as a family to go with that full time. So my sophomore year in high school, we opened full time in a building that we rented that was on the main road in our town. It was crazy. I worked there after school every day, every vacation, all summer long for years, and the business just continued to grow. It was unbelievable. And within less than a year, my parents decided to buy a building for our business instead of renting one. So we had our own building. We started to hire employees, and we were doing very well. Like, we were being noticed by distributors. We were selling new products also, and there were distributors and product lines that were really taking notice and recognizing what we were doing. And to think it all started as a side hustle. Although I don't think that term was being used back then. I'm not sure when that term came about, but I don't think anybody called it a side hustle back then, but they sure do now. So I did that for quite a few years, working at our family's business, all through high school. When I graduated high school, I went full time. I didn't go to college. I didn't want to be in school any longer. I wanted to work at that business. So I did that for quite a few years. And as I grew older, I felt like I needed to make a change. So I left the family business. It wasn't on the greatest of terms, but I left and I went to work for a local company delivering and installing appliances. You know, the guys that bring your new refrigerator and they bring it inside your house on the little dolly. That was me for several years. It was backbreaking, but I sure learned a lot about appliances. I learned a lot about working efficiently, and I learned a lot just working for somebody else other than my family. After about 4 years of working and delivering appliances, I was driving the delivery truck back to the store on a Friday afternoon after a long day and a long week of delivering. I pulled in, I grabbed my things, I headed inside to punch out for the day, and the general manager, who wasn't normally at our location, he was standing inside and he was waiting for me to come through. And of course, my first thought was like, what did I do wrong? But he stopped me in my tracks. He said, "Listen, you've been great. We really appreciate all the hard work you've put in over the years, but we're doing things a little bit differently going forward. And as of right now, we're going to have to lay you off." I was devastated, not because I loved the job, not by any means. Like, it was a hard job. I was devastated because I was blindsided and I didn't have a backup plan. I had bills to pay. I had rent due. I had a truck payment to make, and I had no money coming in. But I made up my mind right then and there that I would never go through that again. This was why I needed a side hustle. And I think in some ways, this was what my parents had been thinking when I was a kid. Now, fast forward quite a few years, and my parents had gotten out of the outdoor power equipment business as well. After they sold the store, they ended up buying a different business, and eventually they approached me about coming to work for them again. Now, at the time, I had moved to a different part of the state, and I had actually been driving 18-wheeler for a couple of years. I had gone and gotten my Class A license, and I was driving 18-wheeler. Now, in addition to driving 18-wheeler, I had also started a little bit of a side business at home of repairing small engines. I was doing exactly what my dad had done because I wanted that side income just in case. I had quite a few customers and it was keeping me pretty busy. Maybe not to the extent that my dad had done it, but I was building a business slowly. But my dad approached me and he talked to me about maybe joining their business, working for them. He was having a really hard time physically to do the work that needed to be done. You know, years of that delivering heating oil and working on vehicles, you know, on a lift. It took a toll on his neck and back, and he was having a hard time getting done what he needed to. And that's really why they wanted to hire me to help in that way. And I felt like I needed to help him. So I quit my job, I moved back to my hometown, and I returned to work for my parents. Although I really shouldn't have, I felt secure in my employment again, working for family. I felt like things were good. I was making decent money, although I could have made more, and I did make more driving truck. But I wanted to be with my family. Now, it was during this time that Jera, my better half, was starting to become obsessed with making what she called meals in a jar. She was seeing them on Pinterest and watching videos on Facebook and YouTube, and she kept telling me about how they'd save her time, we'd be eating healthier, I could take them to work for lunch, on and on and on. I don't know if you have someone like this in your life. Maybe you're in a relationship with them, maybe it's somebody in your family, but she kept like sharing videos with me and pictures and really making it impossible for me not to realize that she wanted to do this. She was interested in these meals. The thing is, I knew, and she knew, that we didn't really have the extra money for what I was basically viewing as a craft project. I know I shouldn't have, but that's how I saw it. You know, with all the pretty layers of food, you know, all stacked up in the jar, and it looks so nice and it's so cute, isn't it? She kept trying to convince me that it was a good idea. And I mean, I agreed. And it's not that she needed my permission, but she usually tries to get me on board with an idea rather than just doing it. I don't know. That's just how we are. I do the same thing. If I have an idea, I try my best to convince her so that at the very least, like, we can be in agreement. Anyway, for quite some time, she hinted about it, and she gradually ramped up her approach. And finally, one day, she played her trump card. She told me not only could we buy the ingredients that she'd need for these jar meals, but we would also be able to sell the ingredients to other people. I remember looking at her and saying, why are we not doing this already? So I guess you could say I was on board at that point. Even though I had gone back to work for my family, I still felt like I needed a backup plan, a safety net, just in case. I wasn't exactly sure what that would look like, but I knew I needed something. We needed something for our family. And it was at that moment that I realized those ingredients for those jar meals, that might be it. So we got started. We got some ingredients. She started making her meals. And right away, my goal was to see if we could earn enough commission to cover the cost of that food that she needed for the meals. Because the way I looked at it was essentially that's free food, right? She got what she wanted. We're not out any more money. What could be better than that? It sounded good to me. So after a little while, we started our YouTube channel and Facebook groups, built our email and text list, and things just started to build. They started to snowball. And I didn't expect how quickly this little side hustle would grow, because people were ordering ingredients through us, and they were ordering month after month after month. So it really grew quickly. Now, like anything, it hasn't come without its setbacks. We've made a lot of mistakes, and we've learned a lot along the way, both in what we're doing and through teaching others to do the same thing, to build their own businesses. But sometimes I have to pinch myself and realize it's not a dream. It's unbelievable. It's like nothing I ever thought I would be doing, but man, is it unbelievable. But keep in mind, at the time, I was still working full time. So Jera was recording videos and creating content and posting on Facebook during the day. And then in the evenings when I got home, I would be editing videos and creating and sending emails. I would do that evenings and weekends. And as time went on, it got harder and harder to keep up. But that's what we did at the beginning. There were some late nights, especially like uploading a video and the internet would cut out, or she'd record, an entire segment, or one time an entire video. And then we found out that the microphone wasn't working and she had to redo it all over again. There were some growing pains, right? And and some late nights. We stayed up. We still do. We upload a video every Sunday, and there are some Saturday nights where it's like getting to be 11, 12, 1 o'clock Sunday morning. But somehow we've always found a way to make it work. So as time went by, I couldn't shake the feeling. I had a gut feeling that my parents wanted to sell this business. My dad's back and his neck were preventing him from doing much at all, to the point where what they hired me to do, I wasn't really able to keep up with it all. I could just sense that they were looking to get out of it and they wanted a change. Now, in the past, I would have been just stressed right out. I would have been wondering if any day would be my last day of being employed. If this paycheck, is this going to be my last paycheck before I have to make a change, before I'm forced to make a change? In the past, I would have been just completely on edge. But this time, in my mind, I knew it was going to be okay. And then finally, it happened. My dad came to me, he took a deep breath, and he said, "We're thinking about selling the place." And it didn't surprise me, and I didn't even have to think about it. I was happy for him. I was excited that they could make a change. But I was also happy for me. I was happy for us. Jara and I had grown our side hustle to a point where it was turning more of a profit than my full-time income. Like way more, to be honest. A lot more. And honestly, I was having a hard time keeping up with everything that I needed to do, and working all day for somebody else was actually slowing down the growth of our business. The relief on his face, knowing that I wasn't upset by their decision, knowing that I would be okay and that they weren't putting me in a tough spot, it was priceless. I know he pushed himself to keep going and to keep their business going, in part because he didn't want to abandon me. He didn't want to leave me out to dry. And I know that probably influenced a lot of the decisions they made, or at least some of them, because they didn't want to leave me without an income. They didn't want to hurt me. Obviously, they knew that we were building our own business, but I'm not one to brag. So they didn't really have a good idea of how much we had grown our business. To them, it looked like, a fun little hobby of doing YouTube videos. But in reality, we were making a lot more doing that silly little YouTube channel than anything else we've ever done. And as it turns out, the timing couldn't have been any better, with them selling their business and us building our business. And losing my job was one of the greatest things to ever happen. So for Jara and I, our focus at that moment turned toward building our empire full time, and we haven't looked back since. Now you might say, well, you don't have a backup plan now, which is sort of true to a certain extent. We have a couple other things that we do, but we've gone all in on this business. But the key to our business is that it has several legs that keep it upright. We have income from our commissions, and then we also have, income from YouTube revenue, from sponsorships, from affiliate sales. We have a few other things that we work on. So even though we have one business, it's a lot like having like 4 or 5 jobs because of the several income streams. If one faltered or slowed down or had to be removed, we could lean on the other income streams and, at least temporarily, at least while we figured things out, we'd be okay. And that's exactly my point with having a side hustle. And that's why I believe so strongly that everybody should have something. That's why I'm sharing my story. Always have a backup plan. Always be prepared for the unknown, just in case. Always have something you're working on the side. I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference. Do you have a side hustle right now? Leave me a comment and let me know what you're working on. I want to hear your story. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me a $sign emoji in the comments. And check out this video here to learn a little bit more about me. I'm Rob with No Worries Network. We'll see you next time.